Venezuela celebrates 50 years of the creation of the Caribbean community and holds CELAC working meetings dedicated to scientific and technological exchange. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin addressed the nation following Wagner's failed insurrection and stressed that any attempt to destabilize the country are doomed to fail. And in Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis was formally sworn in as the Prime Minister after winning a second term by a landslide. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Monday, Venezuela celebrates 50 years of the creation of the Caribbean community, a leading organization in the Caribbean region. The Caribbean Week takes place in Caracas from June 26 to July 1st, with the participation of international guests from the region, as well as the ambassadors of the Caribbean countries to Venezuela, in order to address issues of common interest and strengthen ties of unity and integration. In this context, the symposium on the achievements and challenges of the Caribbean Union is held, led by the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Rafa Gonsalves, as keynote speaker. Political meetings, a photographic exhibition, and a conference on reparations for colonialism and slavery are also being held.
I have recommended to CARICOM and the African Union to establish a permanent commission, the Commission of Africa, Brazil and the Caribbean, the diaspora in North America and in Europe, and this permanent commission will supervise the social, political and economic work of the integration of this mechanism that has enormous potential. CARICOM will be the bridge between Africa and Latin America and the rest of the diaspora.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro proposed the creation of a Latin American and Caribbean Center for Applied Research in Science and Technology that will allow the region to provide joint responses to the main challenges facing the region. The Venezuelan leader made the statement during the working meeting of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States focused on the scientific and technological exchange. Maduro pointed out that the initiative will allow the coordination of policies to address the difficulties caused by climate change. The Venezuelan president also said that the center will put science and technology at the service of the development of health, education, industry, agriculture, and food production, among other areas.
I dare before you and before our honorable President of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States that from this meeting comes out the proposal, the structure, and the agenda of priority issues, so that from CELAC, sooner rather than later, with the support of the 33 countries, we can create a Latin American and Caribbean Center for applied research and science and technology for our 33 countries and for our peoples.
Rafa Gonsalves also stated that it is important to support a permanent CELAC secretariat.
We must have these experiences that metamorphose into institutions. There have already been some attempts in this direction, but we have to build the institutional basis of CELAC. That is why I strongly support the idea of a permanent secretariat of CELAC. I think there is total unanimity among many of the countries represented in CELAC, except for one or two countries, that they have to be persuaded in this matter. But unless we have a clear institutional basis which helps us to strengthen our work, which is a comparative expression of our shared experiences, we will always be lagging behind.
President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, arrived on Monday to Brazil for an official visit where he has scheduled to hold a meeting with President Lula da Silva and other Brazilian authorities. Argentine media report that Fernandez and Lula da Silva plan to discuss trade relations between both countries and the political and social reality of the region. This will be the fifth meeting between Lula and Fernandez since the former labor leader took office. It is expected that among the topics to be discussed will be Argentina's debt with the IMF, the Mercosur-European Union agreement, and the financing of imports. The Argentine president will also meet with the president of the Senate, Rodrigo Pacheco, together with a representative of the Chamber of Deputies. In the United States, the suspect in a mass shooting at a Colorado Springs gay nightclub pleaded guilty in an attack that killed 5 people and wounded 17 last year. The plea entered on Monday brought a sudden end to the court case just 7 months after the shooting and spared victims' families and survivors more painful court hearing and trial. On November 19, 2022, a mass shooting occurred at a Club Q, an LGBTQ+ nightclub in Colorado Springs. As a result, 5 people were killed and 25 others were injured, 19 of them by gunfire. The accused, 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich, was also injured and taken to a local hospital. He was later charged and remanded in custody. The shooting occurred on the eve of the Transgender Day of Remembrance. In Guatemala, on a tense election day marked by complaints and some acts of violence, former First Lady Sandra Torres Casanova, candidate of the Conservative Party National Unity for Hope, and leftist Bernardo Arevalo de Leon, candidate of SID movement, emerged as the main candidates to face each other in a second round. With over 92% of the votes counted and more than 15% of the ballots right-led candidate, Torres Casanova had a lead. The biggest surprise of the day was the leftist Bernardo Arevalo de Leon, candidate of SID movement, who emerged in the heat of anti-corruption demonstrations of 2015 and whom will compete in the second round for the country's presidency. After obtaining over 12% of votes, both candidates are far from the 50% needed to win the presidential race, so both will face each other on August 20th in the final round. Of the 9.3 million Guatemalans called to the polls, about 40% did not vote. In the 2019 election, abstention was 38% in the first round and 58% in the second round. In Argentina, Hildo Infran, governor of Formosa of the Justicialist Party, was re-elected for another term, while in Córdoba, the Electoral Court proclaimed Martín Llarillora of United for Córdoba as winner. Infran described the results as a great triumph in all municipalities of Formosa province after beating his competitor Fernando Carvajal of Together for Change with 70% of the votes. Meanwhile, in the province of Córdoba, Peronist candidate Martín Llarillora, who won with 42.76% of the votes, described the day as democratic and thanked both his voters and his contenders. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin addressed the nation this Monday, stressing that any attempt to destabilize the country are doomed to failure. The statements come after the failed Wagner insurrection on Saturday. The Russian president stated that the strength of Russian society, the executive and judicial power at all levels, was confirmed. In this context, the head of state highlighted that at the beginning of Saturday's incident, the necessary measures were implemented to neutralize the threat and preserve the lives of the citizens. President Putin thanked the Russian people for its unity and patriotism.
Dear friends, today I address once again all Russian citizens. I thank you for your endurance, solidarity, and patriotism. Civil solidarity showed that any ransom, any attempts to organize internal unrest are doomed to fail.
On Monday, the Russian Defense Ministry reported it had repelled 4 enemy attacks in the area of the locality of Rivnopil, a rural community in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region.
In the South Donetsk direction, in the area of the Bremika salient, artillery fire and heavy flamethrower system of the Eastern Group of Forces repelled 4 enemy attacks in the area of the Rivnopil settlement in the Donetsk People's Republic. Over the past 24 hours, the armed forces of Ukraine continue to attempt offensive operation in the Donetsk, Krasny Liman, and South Donetsk region. In the Donetsk region, in the area of the settlement of Spirne of the Donetsk People's Republic, 2 enemy attacks were successfully repelled by competent and courageous actions of the defending units of the southern group of forces. In the Zaporizhia direction near the village of Rabotine in the Zaporizhia region, Russian troops repelled and attacked by units of the 47th Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
On Monday, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu inspected a command checkpoint at one of the units in the Western grouping in special military operation areas. The minister learned firsthand the report submitted by the commander of Yevgeny Nikiforov group with detailed information on the current situation and the nature of the enemy's actions. The so-called Ukrainian counteroffensive has been repelled by the Ministry of Defense since its beginning. Shoigu has highlighted the efficiency of Russian troops, especially in the destruction of the Ukrainian military equipment. Boris Pistorius, German defense minister, said on Monday during a visit in the Lithuanian capital Vilnius that Germany is willing to send troops to Lithuania on a permanent basis to strengthen NATO's eastern flank. According to Pistorius, Germany is ready to deploy a robust brigade in Lithuania on a permanent basis, and added that the necessary infrastructure and facilities will need to be created to accommodate soldiers and their families. He also explained the German government's decision to offer the brigade to Lithuania not only with Russia's war on Ukraine, but also with Germany's own history, claiming that until the end of the Cold War, Germany was NATO's country on the eastern flank. Germany's Bundeswehr has already been present in Lithuania, which borders Russia and Belarus, for 6 years with several hundred soldiers. There, Germany leads a NATO battle group with currently about 1,600 soldiers, including about 780 soldiers from the Bundeswehr.
Precisely, Germany is ready to deploy a robust brigade in Lithuania on a permanent basis, provided that adequate infrastructure, for example barracks, exercise infrastructure, ammunition depots are given, and that SACEUR, of course, maintains the flexibility needed according NATO planning. This is very crucial too.
Anyway, we have a strong...
In the United Kingdom, more than 11,000 people signed a petition published on the British Parliament's official website calling for a referendum to end the supply of arms to Ukraine. The petition aims to get the British government to change its policy, including sanctions against Russia, mainly due to the rising energy prices that are driving up prices in the country. In addition, it intends to end the arms supply and the country to adopt its peaceful neutrality towards the conflict. Likewise, British signatories to the petition accuse UK's authorities of intervening on one side of the conflict in Ukraine, ignoring the views of citizens affected by the economic consequences. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Monday Sweden must stop Kurdish protests in Stockholm to get a green light on its North Atlantic Treaty Organization membership bid. In a phone call with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, President Erdogan stated that Sweden must end protests by Kurdistan Workers' Party supporters on its territory in order to gain approval for membership of the military bloc. The Turkish head of state also highlighted that his nation had a constructive attitude, but Stockholm's change of terrorism laws to meet demands from Ankara was meaningless while PKK supporters hold protests in the country. Kyriakos Mitsotakis was formally sworn in as Prime Minister of Greece on Monday, after winning a second term in an election that has ushered new far-right parties to parliament. With 99.70% of the votes counted, Mitsotakis' New Democracy Party had 40.55%, more than twice the main opposition Syriza's 17.84%. Mitsotakis was sworn in after being formally handed the mandate to govern by Greek President Katerina Sakellaropoulou, and was due later on Monday to name his new cabinet that's to assume his duties on Tuesday. Held under a new electoral law, Sunday's vote gave New Democracy Party a comfortable majority of 158 seats in the 300-member parliament, with Syriza getting 48. On Monday, Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley started her agenda in Beijing by honoring the people's heroes in Tiananmen Square. The Caribbean Premier laid a wreath at the historic site. This Monday, she also plans a series of meetings to continue strengthening relations between Barbados and China. In a first meeting with her Chinese counterpart, Li Qian, they agreed that The good relationship between the two countries should serve as an example of unity, coordination and mutual benefits. The Chinese premier assured that his country is willing to jointly build the Belt and Road Initiative with Barbados. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Israeli attacks and clashes against Palestinian civilians on the occupied West Bank continued on Monday. In this context, the Rumana village, one of the towns hardest hit by the military operation since last year, was stormed by Israeli soldiers close to midnight. According to Wafa news agency, dozens of people were nearly asphyxiated as a result of the tear gas used by the army during the raid. Likewise, Israeli soldiers also raided the neighboring towns of Yalbun and Fakua. Meanwhile, the Palestinian government blamed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the increase in attacks in the occupied territories and for inciting various members of his cabinet to commit crimes. More than 2 million Muslims officially began the annual Hajj pilgrimage on Monday, making their way out of Mecca after circling Islam's holiest site, the Kaaba. One of the largest religious gatherings in the world returned to full capacity this year for the first time since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic 3 years ago. The pilgrimage is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and all Muslims are required to make the 5-day Hajj at least once in their lives, if they are physically and financially able to do it. For pilgrims, it is a deeply moving spiritual experience that absolves sins, brings them closer to God, and unites the world's more than 1.8 billion Muslims. Some spend years saving up money and waiting for a permit to embark on the journey. In Chad, Central Africa, 11 military personnel detained for attempted coup last December were released. Chadian authorities released all 11 military officials involved in the coup, including the president of the Chadian human rights organization, Baradine Berde Targuyo. They also said that the officials and others related to them were sentenced to 20 years in prison. It was finally revealed that they have received amnesty from the country's transitional president, Mohamed Idris Deby, as well as 260 others who had been convicted in December for their participation in anti-government demonstrations. In Sierra Leone, the opposition party on Sunday denounced an attack by the armed forces on its headquarters following the general elections. The leader of the All People's Congress, Samura Kamara, the main opponent of President Julius Maada Bio in the election, said on Twitter that bullets had been fired at his party's headquarters in the capital and confirmed that a woman had died in the incident. On Saturday, some 3.4 million people were called to choose between 13 candidates for the presidential election in a rematch of the 2018 election between Mr. Bio and Mr. Kamura. According to the Election Commission, vote counting continues and results are expected within 48 hours of the count. Chile's National Disaster Prevention and Response Service has decided to evacuate the coastal area of Constitución in the center of the country due to the risk of Maule River overflowing. The mandatory measure was addressed to several municipalities, including La Poza and the northern sector of Quibolco River, due to the risk of a considerable growth of the river flow in the coming hours as a result of the severe weather system affecting the area. Authorities expect that over 1,000 people will be evacuated. According to Mayor Fabian Perez, the operation, which will continue until Monday, will be assisted by military and police personnel in order to protect people's lives. Forest fires in Canada left Montreal blanketed with smoke on Monday, giving it the worst air quality of any major city in the world. According to the pollution monitor IQ Air, which tracks pollution around the globe, Quebec province's most populous city had unhealthy air quality as hundreds of wildfires burned across the country. Meanwhile, Environment Canada issued smoke warnings in several Quebec regions due to fires, saying high concentrations of fine particulate matter are causing poor air quality and reduced visibility, with conditions to persist throughout Monday. The agency urged residents to avoid outdoor activities and wear face masks if they must go outside.
I am a bit sad to see the city like this because we can enjoy it too much and it is a bit unbreathable after a while. But we know that the firefighters are doing their best to restore the situation, so we are waiting.
Yeah, the odor is pretty strong. So as soon as I stepped out of the building, not even stepping out of the building, I could smell like the poor quality of air just oozing through the doors. And immediately I had to get a mask because I knew this is not the type of quality of air we got to be breathing in. And it's harder for her because she has asthma. So.
Yeah.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.